What's up, everybody? This is Christian Shields here, founder of My Secret Purpose. And guess what? It's time to walk into your purpose. You probably clicked on this video because you're like, 2019 sucked for me too. 2019 had a lot of transitions. It had a lot of new information that I found out about myself and other people. It had a lot of relationship shifts and different dynamics that impacted your life in a way that you didn't even imagine that it would. Or maybe you clicked on this video because you're sitting here wondering, like me, what exactly sucked in Christian's life? What exactly did she encounter? Or maybe you're trying to find yourself in the problems. Maybe you're trying to reduce what you actually feel in 2019. And maybe that feeling within yourself, you're trying to get a better understanding of how 2019 can be better and on a better note, or help you plan for 2020. So here's this. I decided that I would hop on here and share with you all what I felt about 2019. 2019 was a year that really sucked for me because I had to make a lot of tough decisions. I had to make a lot of changes, and they were based off of what I found out that I needed on a personal level. And I know you're thinking, well, maybe you're not, but as a business owner, sometimes you're thinking, how can I make these transitions as a solo entrepreneur? Not having, as a micro enterprise, where there's not many people that's working in your business unless it's contracted work, where you don't really have a staff of people that can keep things running and at a flow while you take the time that you need to do the necessary work on yourself and with yourself that you have to do. So here's some things of why 2019 really sucked for me. It really sucked because at the close of the last 3 months of 2018, I really found myself in a place where my inner critic began to really rise up. There was an unfortunate loss and death in my life that sent me into a downward spiral, to the point that I had to really decide what was going to get the oxygen in that moment. Was it going to be the business and I was just going to be on life support and functioning throughout the business? Or was it going to be me personally? Was I just going to be on life support and barely functioning in the business? And for you that may have had to make that decision, you got two choices in that moment as a solo entrepreneur. And that is, one, you could decide that you're going to put everything on autopilot and you're going to let the business kind of run itself. Or two, you're going to hire in. You're going to hire and you're going to allow someone else to take over while you go and do the necessary work on yourself. Well, here's the thing. I did both. But what I learned in the process of doing both is that I decided that what was going to actually get the greater part of me was to take the time and make the decision actually to spend more time with requalifying myself. And when I say requalifying myself, I mean spending more time with myself and addressing those inner critical thoughts, those inner critical feelings and emotions that began to drive me. And so one of the things that we have to really understand is that 2019 sucked primarily for these reasons. Because I had to stop and say, hey, your inner critic is really beating you up right now. You're starting to feel like you're not enough. You feel like you've disqualified. You're starting to feel like maybe people aren't getting it or understanding it. Maybe people, you starting to feel like you don't have any support. You're starting to feel like you don't make much of a difference, which was weird to actually have, because it wasn't like I wasn't getting participation from places. It wasn't like my business wasn't able to move forward. It wasn't as if I was not getting positive feedback. But what began to show up were my experiences from my childhood, my experiences from being bullied from 3rd grade all the way to my sophomore year of high school. Those experiences began to shape me, and those inner critical thoughts, those things that people used to say and do to me, began to rise up again. I began to experience those in adulthood, right? A lot of times we think we process things and we think we've gotten away from things, but then you get put in positions that cause those to come up. Some examples would be relationship dynamics. You find yourself in a repeated situation with a spouse or a partner, and you question your identity in the midst of those relationships. Some other things are family dynamics, integrating your world with another world, and the social and cultural backgrounds that people come from different perspectives, but there's a level of expectation that is placed upon you. And I always call it the invisible line, right? The invisible line, the unspoken expectation that exists, and you will be held accountable for it. So you have those experiences that also could breed unwanted hate, and then you have other experiences that happen where you find the dynamics of the relationships, friendships that you've encountered, that you've probably had more narcissistic friendships. You probably have people in your life that don't really know how to survive and process through things themselves, and so some of that kind of gets placed upon you. You also may find yourself in situations where the conversation gets different. You realize that you've grown, and the things that you in previous friendships like to talk about, they no longer serve you in the growth capacity in which you're moving forward in. So 2019 really, really sucked, because a lot of people probably experienced a lot of transitions and change in the relational area of their life, and that turned into interpersonal troubles, interpersonal concerns that you may have found yourself questioning, not your identity. I say not your identity because in essence we know who we are, but you may question how you show up, how you present yourself, the level of trust that you give in a certain environment, or the level of respect that you give to certain people due to the nature of your engagement. And so a lot of 2019 was heavily focused on revisiting places that I probably piloted before, that I left on autopilot, like I left the business. Like, a lot of it was focused on going back to those places and re-engaging them and finding out what the root of that criticism was, or the root of that critique, and having to bring it to the forefront and addressing it. So I did find myself in places now where I realized, those were situations that I found out. I put it here. I found out the passive aggressive version of me and the passive version of me that would put other people before me, that will pass off things before I even had an opportunity to give it to myself. And so when I start realizing that was a repeated pattern of behavior in some of the relationships that I had, I realized that I no longer wanted to engage in those relationships, because those relationships were being shared with people who either, one, only needed me to serve certain purposes in their lives, or two, they were giving me information and feeding me and giving me feedback from places with things that they haven't even figured out how to even put in their own lives. And so one of the things that I've learned was to pre-qualify the way that you are digesting and receiving information. From whom is that information coming from? How is it relevant? And I'm saying this to you because 2019 probably sucked, because you had to re-engage with the new level of thinking. You had to re-engage with the capacity to be able to say, you know what, in this very place that I am, I have to make decisions. I have to be a greater thinker. I have to think through things. I have to process these things. These things need to make more sense. Wait a minute. All areas. You kind of look at your life before you. But I say this to say that, with since hitting this place and having to enter into a new world of vulnerability, feeling uncomfortable, learning new perspectives, learning new tools, and adding things into my personal toolbox, into my personal self-care kit. In having to do that, I have really learned that a lot of who you want to become is buried under your capacity to accommodate all the ish that you've accepted and allowed in your life. So at this point and at this place in my life, when I realized that, I said, you all may have noticed it, but I can tell you now, I'm not ashamed, that I took a shift from offering these, from just offering all these different areas of things to focus on. I took a shift and I decided that, you know what, in this very place, what I was going to decide to do was create an environment and a safe space where people can feel comfortable to come and talk about engaging in self-care, engaging in balancing your world and bringing things, which ultimately to me means bringing things into perspective that may look like you prioritizing, right? And then the last thing is then get to business next, because if you're not well, everything connected to you can be impacted. And so it's allowing yourself that ability to reimagine yourself, reestablish yourself, and then re-engage, right, with yourself and then others. So a lot of 2019 really sucked is because you've probably gone the past couple of years not doing that. You've probably gone the past couple of years on autopilot and ducking and dodging nonsense with your family drama, or ducking and dodging hate speeches and comments from people who, like, people's unsolicited advice. So you've probably spent a lot of 2019 like I did. And if you did, here's the hope part of this. Here's the best part about why it was great for you to experience that in 2019. Because you shed a lot of dead weight. You shed a lot of the things that probably robbed you of your voice, that probably robbed you of experiencing joy and true happiness. And you've probably changed the dynamics of, you probably raised your standard. And you've identified the quality of person that you are, and why you are a great person, and why your voice matters, and why you are needed. And these are important things to think about, because 2019 for the rest of it needs to be seen as a lesson learned. It needs to be seen as a place where you've come in, you've planted, and you've uprooted things, and you've allowed things to really evolve. But I want to make sure that I hit on all of the points that, I wanted to share with you all about why 2019 sucks. But I want to leave you with hope as well. Because here's the thing about yourself. You want to be able to have healthy boundaries, healthy relationships, healthy partnerships, healthy in a lot of different places. And that looks different. Because that also means that you have to be a strong negotiator and advocate for yourself so that you can re-engage and reimagine yourself. And so that you can begin to experience things differently. Because the part here is doing life differently. I made a post that talked about don't just aspire to be different. Aspire to make a difference. You understand what I'm saying? Aspire to create an impact that ripples down. So in order for me to do that, I have to be willing to share with you the personal experiences in my life and where I am in those personal experiences so that they can impact you in a way that's meaningful. So that you're able to actually understand what is taking place in your life. And that you can take something and use it. But here's the best part, about all of this, because you learn to become discerning, and then you realize it's not a fight against. You realize that that strong mentality, and that just keep it moving. Those toxic positive traits that people express and tell you, you begin to see the people that pass you over. The people that pass you over, the people that don't really have time to engage with you. And you can look at things one or two different ways, right? You can look at it as if that person doesn't care, or you can look at it as if that person has something that's going on inside of them that you can't even touch right now, you can't even see. And then you realize that the common denominator is one or two things. Either you can accept and understand that you wanted that person to be there in that moment and they can't be there in that moment, and that it was a thought that you placed upon them, or you recognize that in that moment you needed something. And it may be up to you to have to go out and get it and figure out how to get it in yourself. But ultimately, it's learning to process and become a thinker. Become a better thinker so you can make better decisions. So that's why 2019 sucked. But guess what? 2019 can continue to suck because it's a lesson learned. And accept it. And begin to reimagine yourself in a different way so that you can become who you want to be. So I want you to ask yourself today, who do you want to be? Who do you want to become? And I want you to begin to take a look at that. Because now you're in a place where who you want to become, you got to begin to challenge those thoughts and those experiences that are impacting you in a way or causing you to live in a defeated state of mind that is not allowing you to move forward. And it's time for your inner voice and your ability to think to rise up and be a negotiator for what you truly, truly want. So enjoy the rest of 2019. You all be great. If you are not connected with My Secrets Purpose, go ahead and like the page and share this video. I'd love to connect with you so you can join and sign up for our emailing list. There's a lot of great changes coming on through the organization because of this work that I'm doing, because of these changes, and because I am living it. And I think that's important to know. To live it is one thing, to experience it is one thing, but to only talk about it is nothing. So you all be great and have a great rest of 2019.